Hello there. Today we're going to be drawing the Tower of London. We're using Google Earth here. Thank you, Google Earth. It's a really useful tool for exploring a site before you actually visit it, so you can kind of orientate yourself, get a sense for where the best views might be from. The tower itself is a castle that was built in 1178 from memory, and it has a wonderfully rich history. The thing that I think is most interesting about it, it was never a castle to defend London, it was to suppress it. In 1066, the French invaded England and basically possessed it and never really left. And it's a castle that was built to hold down the kind of rebellions of the Londoners. So it's a castle there or the cannon, as it were, faces the city rather than faces the sort of the invaders from the river. So it has a rich history. The central core of it, the White Tower itself, that is the first part that was built in the 1170s. And so that's going to be our target for today. And we've chosen a spot beside St. Thomas's Tower, looking up towards the large round tower, which is Wakefield Tower. And we're looking to draw something in a slightly different way here. I'm actually trying to do this in what I would think of as one colour, blue. Obviously I'm using black and white as well, but I don't consider those necessarily to be colours. And it's a kind of a sort of creative test, whether I can bring enough dynamism to a drawing that has such a limited palette range. This is part of reaction to how many colours one carries around with you when you're doing an urban sketching task. So it's kind of a little sort of experimental test. I thought it was important to view the White Tower itself, but it's actually a little difficult to find a position you can see the tower from. Over the 200 or 300 years after the initial White Tower was built, they built sort of ring walls around it to increase the fortifications, to make it a more defensive castle. Those now form a kind of barrier to viewing to the interior. You basically have to pay your entrance fee and go in to do the full drawing of the interior, and I wasn't in the mood to pay the entrance fee today. So I'm drawing it from, as it were, the publicly accessible areas outside the main castle. You'll see here I've started by choosing a piece of grey paper, and I've gone straight in with white as my sort of primary line generator. And at this moment, I've already broken my guidance to myself. I've allowed myself to include a cream as a non-colour, which of course is cheating. So it really immediately becomes a two-colour. And then I cheat again because I decide I want to use grey. So I later convinced myself that as blue is dominant, I've still kind of kept to my game. But the whole point of the way I draw is if I go in with a plan, I'm going to change the plan. I know that in advance. It's part of the freedom, the expressiveness that comes with it. At this moment, I'm bringing out the Indigraph, of course, in order to bring some sense of the sketch alive. I mean, the white is an interesting method, but I'm not yet in love with that process. I feel as if there's a lot more to find in it. Maybe I actually need to load an Indigraph with white acrylic ink. That might be a test to do. And it's quite a complex position. I'm having to do a lot of looking up and down. I'm having to focus on lots of multiple points at once. And there's obviously thousands of tourists, so it's actually quite a challenging view. It's also a strange weather day, as often is the case in London. It goes from sun to heavy cloud. I made the decision from the beginning to ignore this lamppost until the end because I didn't want to be drawing carefully around the lamppost. I guess it's one of the benefits of using this acrylic brush pen process is that you can overdraw, you can draw over the top of, I should say. So I was able to add this blue lamppost towards the end of the drawing and literally just draw straight over the top of all the other lines I've drawn, and only I know I've really done that process, and it saves a lot of time. Bearing in mind that key to this sketching process is speed. For me, a sketch is something which should be fast and furious in a fun way. It shouldn't be something that feels too laboured over. It shouldn't feel like you're doing a job for somebody else. It should be you having some fun doing a drawing. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we've all learned things by doing it. The White Tower is called so because it uses white sandstone, which had to be imported specially from France. It's again symbolic of its imposition, that the new king, the new French king, didn't use local stone to build this castle. He imported his own local French stone in order to kind of stamp his authority and his difference, his a new king's in town. Just to the side of me here is the Traitors Gate, which was once connected to the Thames completely, and it was where traitors would be brought in. Although the castle started out as a way of suppressing the will of the people, so to speak, to impose a new sort of royal will. After 200 years, 300 years, that was no longer necessary. So it became a sort of royal castle where the king would keep things. He kept his animals, he kept his prisoners, and in the case of Henry VIII, I'm afraid he kept the wives he no longer wanted anymore. So it has a vivid history, including lots of sad bits. You can see here how the use of the blue is starting to explore that intention I had. So we've got the blue of the lamppost, we've got the blue of the sky, we've got the blue of the stone, although the stone is not really blue, but it has a coolness to it, I suppose. So I'm trying to make these three colours a blend, but retain a level of graphical independence without calling on too many colours, in order to create something visually engaging, something that has a bit of energy to it. In hindsight, I think I probably should have used just 3 different blues. I've restricted myself too much by one blue. Obviously, part of the joy of these kinds of exercises is they don't have to be successful. If that, it's a process of exploration. It's a test. It's I guess a game that you play with yourself to see whether there's fun to be had there. There are sometimes drawings I do where I set myself a little task, and if I feel as if it's not working, I'll still finish the drawing. I just won't show anybody. It won't go up on my Instagram. There won't be a video of a drawing that's a total disaster. If I feel as if there's nothing to be learned, it was just I set myself a task that didn't make sense in the end, but I didn't know that till the end. So I'm going through now trying to refine, bringing in a much finer line for the whites, bringing in some highlights, trying to bring some complexity to the distance. It's something I'm continuously trying to work on, that sense of the difference between the foreground and the background, and often I'm doing that with kind of the size of the lines that I make, the mark making. So here you see in the foreground I'm using a very thick black brush pen in order to kind of block in shadow, and in the midground I'm using a mid brush pen, and in the background a very fine pen, just to kind of give a very simple way of implying that kind of sense of progression. Getting towards the end of the drawing here, again I'm breaking my rules all over the place, using greys and beiges, but hell, I'm going to allow myself that's all part of the joy of drawing in the open air. And I've enjoyed the drawing enough. I don't think it's a true representation of the tower. I think it's, if anything, I should probably do this whole drawing again and not choose blue, maybe choose a kind of warm grey or something like that, see if I can get something like that, and maybe use a different colour paper as a starting position than the grey. But it's a drawing that has lots of energy in it. It's quite visually dynamic, and I think I've learned quite a bit by doing it. So ultimately, from an urban sketch point of view, it was successful, I suppose. Oh, but look at that stone. Doesn't it look like honey now? Yeah, I need to redraw this, don't I? So, thank you for watching. I've enjoyed it. Hope you have enjoyed some of it too. You can find a lot more on my Instagram page.